formed around 2020. And there were several things that they were drawing out of that they thought would benefit from us doing some optimization on our system. So we performed this optimization study called Connect SGF with Olson. Out of that, we got short-term, mid-term, and long-term plans and goals and recommendations. And we have done route changes. So the study was completed in December of last year. We took our first round of recommendations to our Board of Public Utilities and our Citizens Advisory Committee at the utility in February of this year. We gave them a preview in January. And we have taken route changes, fare changes, and technology changes to them. The route changes were implemented in October, actually September the 29th. Our ITS system was replaced, our technology was replaced actually September 29th as well, in conjunction with the route changes. And we lowered our fares as a function of this by 20% as a function of the study as well. In our technology changes, we're changing how we've gone from route match. We're moving to Trip Spark. I'm using the Novus platform for fixed route, and Streets for fixed route, and Novus for our paratransit system. Also, in the last 12 months, we've added a couple of minivans to the fleet, and they'll go into full Access Express or paratransit use following the full implementation of the Novus software. We've replaced all of our cutaways in the last 12 months. And beginning today, we're doing a full install of quantum wheelchair restraints, the fully automated wheelchair restraints, in all of our buses, including 29-foot buses, which will be, if we get this completed, will be the first full fleet with 30-foot buses, 29-foot buses installed. And then on top of that, we're dealing with the same issues everybody else is with hiring, ELDT, those rules that came down, and then just dealing with some succession planning as we recognize some shortfalls of the way we've done things in the past, and looking forward to how we're going to do things in the future. So those are some of the things that are on our plate.
All right, great. Thanks, Matt. And I'm sure myself and several others will have some follow-up questions for you in a little bit. Appreciate those updates. Tracy, I'm going to turn it over to you next. If you want to just give us an update on, how things have been going in your transition into the executive director's role, and, maybe at this point, what do you see as sort of your biggest challenges or opportunities, or, things that you're facing over the course of the next year?
Sure. I would say that SMTS as a whole doesn't have anything major going on outside of the norm. I said we are a pretty well-oiled machine, at this point, after being in business as many years as we have. Denny left me in a very good position. We do have a few projects that we're working on. One of them being the Section 5339 building project that we were awarded three years ago. It's been a while. It feels like it's been forever. We finally were able to get our 100% drawings from our architects and engineers, and we'll be moving to invitation for bids very soon. That's very exciting for us because it's taken us a long time to get here. We've had to really drag people along to get to this point, but we're really hoping that the project will be done next summer. So that will be really good. It's a building that we purchased, and it's in Park Hills, which is in St. Francis County. It's one of our biggest counties. And we really needed a place there that we could, more importantly than housing our employees, our drivers, our coordinators, was housing the vehicles, because we have so many there. And it's hard to find office space that has enough parking. So this is going to be really good for us. We're going to have training room there where we can have our safety meetings and things of that nature. So that's going really well. We are doing the no fares for the polls here next week, I guess it'd be. And if anybody is along the route, or our route is actually going to a poll location, we are going to let them ride without having to pay a fare for that. And that includes our fixed routes if the route is along a poll location. Just in general stuff, we've got our single audit happening right now. The biannual audit from MoDOT and FTA will be starting very soon. So those things are all kind of going along. I've been kind of trying to get my teeth sank into some advertising and marketing, just kind of get a really good feel for where we are and what we're doing and things like that. Our routes are going well. Probably the biggest, I think, struggles that we're having right now would probably be just figuring out ways to have less incidents. Not that we've had a lot, but it, even one is a big deal. So we always look at what can we do to prevent these types of issues. We've had a lot of conversation about how to improve things, but our safety program is actually very strong. Our employees undergo more training than is even required under the regulations that we're under, but even trying to get backup cameras and things like that is pretty costly. And I think that's where we run into struggles the most is there are technologies out there, there are things available, but the cost sometimes is such a huge factor that it's not always possible to do that, especially when you're buying upfitted vehicles that don't come with, standard market or not standard market factory, like cameras, backup cameras and things like that. So I think that's something that we'll always continue to try and improve.
Great. Appreciate those updates, Tracy. And Stephanie, would you like to go next and talk about what you've seen in your first 6 months and maybe some of the challenges and opportunities you're looking to take advantage of going forward?
At the very beginning of my time at SERV, there was such a huge learning curve because there's lots of acronyms in transportation. Looking at the different funding streams that we go after for our match, working with our awesome MoDOT team to figure out, how can we do best practices and how do we stretch those dollars that we are going to be able to receive from them. We've had some growing pains with transition in staff and, of course, always seeking new drivers and looking at ways to reduce our expenses on the maintenance because our vehicles are fairly old and costing quite a bit of our budget to fix them. We've looked at a new building that hopefully we can get approval to relocate to next year, and that will allow us to have a bus barn and actual awnings to cover the buses going into the future. We are looking at developing more fixed routes that hopefully we can partner with our county commission and our cities on being able to run an actual shopping route or something to that nature. And at this time, the hardest thing that we're doing is seeking funding, doing some changes in the way the forms were made for our billing, looking at, how do we do better going forward as far as getting our community match and being able to get the right amount requested from the 5311 grant. And we're looking at other ways to fund our program, of course, seeking new vehicles, replacement vehicles, or even match on vehicles as we go forward on what we've put forward to MoDOT as far as what we're hoping to get in the next couple of years for our replacement vehicles. The hardest part for us, though, has simply been transition, and we're looking at a new software system. We've had Paraplan, and the one we are looking at is now TripMaster. But if any of you have any ideas or better suggestions, please throw it in the chat because I don't want to sign a contract until I know that it is a wise decision. So any of your advice would be well appreciated.
All right, great. Thanks, Stephanie. And yeah, definitely technology changes and opportunities out there, that was discussed at the conference, and I think a good thing for us to discuss today. Ginny, how are things going in Cape these days? How has your transition gone?
Well, I will say that it's been a year for us here. Obviously, I had prior, transportation experience coming from SMTS, so that left me in a good knowledge base. However, what it didn't prepare me for is that we're an entity that receives both rural dollars from ODOT and direct recipient from FTA. So now I had to learn, obviously reporting changes, funding changes, and all of those things with no previous administration left. I came into an organization that had, just had a retired executive director as well as the staff. So that was challenging for us, but I would like to say that we overcame that with great success. And then my first month here, I was notified of 5 reviews, one of them being the FDA annual triennial review, along with the MoDOT review. audits, workman's comp audits, insurance audits, and it was a definite struggle to be audited on things that I wasn't here for. So it was finding pieces of paper everywhere and kind of moving forward, rewriting policies to be in compliance, getting grants, funding, putting grants, going through that process with the FTA. Getting a non-renewal with our insurance provider at the time in the midst of all of that too. So, you know, it was definitely a challenging few months, but, you know, great support from both MoDOT and FTA, as well as other providers across the state has allowed us to pick up kind of what we felt like was a ball that was just on fire constantly and move forward. You know, like I can say that CTA has grown over, we've seen a 25% increase from FY23 to FY24 in ridership, which is huge, while still trying to navigate a driver shortage. You know, this week is moving week, so there's nothing on my walls behind me. We are getting to move into a brand new location for us. So we are going from renting an office space to a space that now has a parking lot for our vehicles, work bays so we can do our own mechanic work. So all of these things. And so we will be in our new location starting next Monday. And then if that wasn't all the excitement, I was awarded a Thriving Communities grant. So I spent half a week in Washington, DC a couple weeks ago. And we are starting the process of what that looks like for us to grow as a community here in Cape Girardeau, and maybe modeling our fixed route system with Oxford, Mississippi, who incorporates their college, because the college gets their funding through us as a subrecipient. So lots of great things going on here, but I would say that it has not been without a lot of headache and spending a lot of time in this building to make things work. So.
All right. Well, congrats on the grant, and you sound just a little busy over there, but lots of exciting things. Gina, how are things going in Joplin? How has your transition gone?
It's been a little rocky, but that's okay. For the first time in a long time, we are fully staffed, so that's exciting. Still trying to roll out the fixed route system, which has been down for about 2 years. We're hoping for a December relaunch, just waiting to get a final approval from the city council. We went to TripSpark as well as a new dispatching system. We had been with Route Match and it was crumbling daily after I arrived, which was a little unnerving. It's been really well. Our go live was yesterday. The drivers have struggled a little bit from moving from a pickup drop off mentality to more of a paratransit, you know, having multiple people on the bus all at one time. So that's been a learning curve for some of our drivers. We also were awarded a AOPP grant, which is going to allow the city to study whether or not Joplin would be a good fit for a transit authority. And that was awarded to Transpo. So David Johnson's going to be down next week to meet with our city council. And then a couple of the ladies on here, I reached out and I said, you know, I need some information about pre-trip inspections. We're doing it like it's 1982 here. And that has gotten us into some hot water. And they said, check out Whip Around. So got that lined out yesterday, and one day next week, as soon as I get some free time off of a bus, we will launch Whip Around for our pre-trip inspections and move to a more digital platform. So lots of things are happening here all at once.
All right, great. Juan, it's great to hear everyone helping one another too, which is fantastic. Dorothy, before we head to a little more open-ended conversation, how are things going with Oats these days, and what updates do you have for the group?
Okay. Well, the good thing about going last is I can just say ditto, 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 because they've hit on a lot of, we're all experiencing something of the same things. Similar to what Tracy indicated, we too are struggling with how to reduce safety incidents. Nothing major. It's perfectly safe to ride the Oats bus, but just really focusing in on our training with the drivers to make sure that they're paying attention to all the little things. And I'm very interested, Matt, in how the automated securement systems work for you, because I've seen some on the smaller vehicles where they automatically ratchet down that wheelchair, which is very helpful for the drivers. Again, cost would prohibit us from retrofitting vehicles, but perhaps we can talk to MoDOT about including that in their procurement, because these little safety incidents, they add up. They truly add up. Now, we did fortunately get a grant from MoDOT to where we can retrofit some of our vehicles with real-time camera system, and I'm excited to get that implemented. I think that would be helpful and help us with training and coaching of drivers. Out in the rural areas, there is so much talk and movement on mobility management. And we at Oats are just trying to wrap our arms around that and figure out how we fit into that puzzle. An exciting project sponsored by MoDOT over on the west side of the state. And I was pleased to see, Kim, that Christy has set up a call to let us know what that's all about. And also at Oats, trying to figure out how we can fill some of the gaps in service that we hear about all the time. Just what are the service needs out in rural Missouri? And hopefully these mobility management initiatives could help us figure that out. On the good news, hiring seems to be going really well for us. When we put out ads, we actually get applicants. And they actually come to training, and a few of them actually stay beyond training. And that's something we haven't seen in a few years. So that's exciting. We're building our driver pool back up, and we are only down one accountant here at home office. So I feel like we've turned a corner on that and starting to see the light of day.
Great, thanks, Dorothy. Before we jump into conversation, let's have a couple more introductions. A couple folks hopped on while we were doing those introductions. Chuck, would you like to introduce yourself and just agency and what your role is and how long you've been in your position?
Okay, I am Chuck Stewart. I'm Chief Operating Officer of Metro Transit in St. Louis. I think I've been in my current position about 5 years. Basically, we have bus, light rail, and vans, paratransit vans. And I just hopped on here because I figured I'd get some good ideas from other people.
Well, that's awesome. That's what we're here for today. So appreciate you taking the time. David, would you like to introduce yourself quick to the group?
Hi,
Oh, we lost you.
let's just see, here's my,
Oh, there we go. I can hear you again.
can you hear me?
Yes.
So I'm David Knaut. I'm a multimodal planner with the Ozarks Transportation Organization, which is an MPO. So we are not a transit provider. So I just more hopped on here to see what's going on with transit.
Great. All right. Thanks for joining us today. I am not planning to monopolize the conversation, but I'll throw out a little conversation starter for you. It sounds like anecdotally from you all that hiring has gotten easier, things are improving. I know being in St. Louis, Chuck, I think we've heard from you and we've heard from Talby that, things are going well in terms of operators. I'm wondering just in general if people are having more success, if everyone's having that success, and if you are, do you think it's just the economy and the ecosystem we're in is improving, or are you all, doing things differently? Have you shifted strategies to kind of, adjust based on how things have gone previously? Don't be shy. Who wants to jump in?
I'll start. So for us, I think the increase in salary that we negotiated with the union a couple years ago has been helpful. We still have struggle once we get people in. We can typically keep them around. The problem is we still have problems with people ghosting us once we're ready to make an offer, or not qualifying. They've misrepresented something on their application, like having a GED or high school diploma, and then that they just fail the background check. Those are our biggest hurdles. But once we get somebody in the door, we're having a lot better time keeping them.
I can speak on ours too, kind of the same way. We've increased our starting wages, so that has made a difference as far as getting applications. But I kind of can echo Matt here in saying that even though we get applications, great people, it's getting them past that next stage. But once you do, then they are sticking around and staying with us and seeing the investment in us.
Awesome.
And at Oates, we did slightly increase wages, but we also took a long, hard look at our benefit package and tried to improve that a little bit, more paid days off, switched to a PTO system for drivers, which has been received very positively, and also took a look at our new hire onboarding and orientation. So we're not just throwing them out there. And some folks that we recruit don't necessarily come from a transit background. And so to put them behind the wheel of a larger vehicle or ask them to transport people with mobility aids, it can be intimidating. So providing more increased one-on-one and improving that training to get them to a comfort level so they'll make it through orientation and hopefully have a long-term career with us.
Very similar here for SMTS. It has gotten a little easier to keep our driver staff full in our various counties. It's not perfect, and I definitely feel like there's more turnover in that area than I would like to see, especially when you're used to people that stay long term. And our drivers, we have quite a few that are part-time, so you do see turnover. And so it is hard to keep them all the time, but it's gotten a little better. It's gotten a little easier to get the better applicants.
So at Metro in St. Louis, I think we've talked previously about our hiring incentives, $5,000 sign-on bonus. So that was very successful in getting people in the door. We've reached a point now where we're pretty secure in terms of bus drivers, but and we're pretty secure in terms of van drivers. Our issue now is mechanics. One thing, one thing that I guess I should have anticipated: when you hire new drivers, you have more accidents. So and not having enough mechanics. So now our issue is mechanics and the number of buses in our fleet. But along with the sign-on bonus, we also did things like 401k contributions for our operators, kind of make it sticky because it's a 4-year vesting period for that. We also completely revamped our training processes so that we could get up close and more personal with drivers throughout that process. Probably the most successful thing we've done is the mentorship program, which we did in conjunction with ATU International. And so we've got every new operator gets a mentor. That mentor, they work very closely right after they get out of training. The operator drives with the mentor for a week, driving the mentor's route and getting instruction. And then the mentor rides with the new employee on their route for a week. So we really had to. It's a different breed in these new operators that we're hiring. So they needed a lot more hands-on, a lot more additional training and supervision, and that seems to be working for us.
Great. It does sound like, you know, several of you are dealing with maybe, you mentioned, you know, safety issues and things like that. And I'm wondering if you think it is just because there's maybe a lot more new drivers. I mean, are you seeing safety incidents uptick and looking at, you know, how to maybe change some of your training, or do you think it's just something that there's always these issues and it's just something that you always kind of have to deal with?
I think there are a few more issues. It's we're emphasizing more defensive driving. It's not just our drivers, it's the drivers on the streets where we operate.
Right.
It's a big issue in St. Louis.
Travis, I can answer to that question as well. From a smaller rural nonprofit transit, with the construction going on Highway 54 and the bridge, it's put, of course, some delays in our ability to get people from Callaway County into Jefferson City. And what we found is the bus drivers were feeling the pressure to get to their next appointment on time. And so they weren't necessarily having an accident, but they were making choices that perception was they weren't being as safe. And so even though they legally didn't do anything wrong, the perception by, you know, a bystander was that, you know, we were racing to our next destination. So we've had better training as far as perception is reality, and you've got to definitely overemphasize your stops and overemphasize your speed limits. But also we looked at the route he was on, and this one driver in particular, and found that we went to the same entity 3 times in a 4-hour window and delivered to the same area on those routes. So we convinced that daycare solution for adults to let us pick up at one time, and it's saving us a ton of time and a ton of resources.
That's a good point, Stephanie. When we have an incident, often the drivers say, I felt rushed. And so we're working with our dispatchers and schedulers to make sure we're building in adequate time so the drivers don't feel that pressure, and also empower the drivers, don't rush. You know, if you find yourself falling behind on the schedule, call the office and let us know. But don't take shortcuts to try to get there sooner and get back on schedule.
Dorothy, could I ask which transit data software you use for scheduling?
We've been using EcoLane for about 6 years now, and it's tied in. For the first time 6 years ago, our drivers went from paper schedules to electronic real-time scheduling, and that was a learning curve. It truly was. And even today, I still get drivers saying, I was speeding because the tablet told me I was behind schedule. And that is when we have to follow up with the driver and coach them that don't, you know, break the law or take shortcuts because of what the tablet says. Call the office and we can get you back on schedule.
Thank you.
I'll say for SMTS, of course, we've had some accidents, you know, over the years, but it seems like the majority of things that we're dealing with are not accidents caused from our drivers. It's people falling on our buses, misstepping, trying to maneuver themselves, not waiting for anyone to assist them, things of that nature. And that actually causes just as many problems. And I think there's very limited things that you can do there to change things other than trying to really coach your riders when they get on, you know, what the expectation is. And they sometimes still want to do what they want to do, you know. Sometimes they're very adamant because, you know, we all get older and want to be independent, that they're very capable of walking on their own, yet sometimes they're not. And sometimes things happen and then, you know, it ends up being a liability for SMTS. So I don't think there's a lot you can do there other than continue to coach your drivers on how to talk to the riders about, you know, waiting for assistance, and trying to use their best judgment and what's safe when they navigate throughout the bus.
For us, when we, about 7-8 years ago, we installed Mobileye, which is just a bolt-on forward collision avoidance system, lane diversion technology, things like that. It doesn't take over and break the bus, but it helped us. We actually saw things increase a little bit because we think we're smarter than the technology. And then quickly everything tailed off. All the big accidents dropped off. What we're seeing is an increase, similar to what Chuck was saying, an increase in accidents with our new bus operators. And basically, we use our mirrors on our big buses like curb feelers for trees and signs. And we've looked at technology that will bring a camera on the outside of the bus. I'm sorry, I probably shouldn't have said it that way, but we've been looking at technology on from Roscoe that has the cameras on the outside that are rear facing that would replace your you'd have monitors on the inside of your pillars that look like that. Our mechanics have warned us that that may actually end up costing us more because people get comfortable with the narrower bus, and it's probably not a bad idea to have those $500 mirrors out there that will take a hit instead of taking a couple $1,000 hit by smacking the side of a bus into something. So some of the things that we're considering here in the same area.
Thanks. Great. Another thing that came up, and I think everyone's dealing with, is, vehicle procurement issues. How are you all handling that in terms of, there's obviously the maintenance cost side of things, which has been discussed a bit, and then looking at, retrofitting, getting used vehicles, different funding mechanisms. How have you all been able to kind of weather the storm in terms of not being able to get what you need and make sure that now that you've got the operators, you've got the vehicles for them to use?
Well, I think it's helped that MoDOT was able to, for SMTS, able to help us secure some vehicles last year through a different state contract, which really helps since we hadn't got vehicles in quite some time. I actually had a conversation with Christy not too long ago, and they're going to be looking into those escrow percentages, because at the cost of new vehicles, most of them are double what it used to be. And based on our current match and what we have, if I escrowed the maximum amount allowed under the Section 5311 grant to set aside for the match going forward, the max that I could set aside is not enough to pay for the number of vehicles that we would normally get on an annual basis, assuming that we could actually get those. The funding just would not be there, because 20%, what it was 2-3 years ago is double that now, and the max that you can escrow under those programs is 25, and that's operating and capital, and it's just not going to be enough. So they're going to be looking, I think, at what changes could be made there. And of course, at the breakfast award ceremony for MPTA, we talked about the fact that they may be changing that to an 80-20 program, and that could be a game changer for us for a multitude of reasons. Being able to afford some of those technologies and safety devices that we could add to our vehicles, being able to increase the actual insurance that we provide to our drivers. We have a very high number of retirees, and that makes health insurance much more costly. And so right now we can only offer minimal essential coverage to those. So I think those changes where they may, look at how the grant is applied or the match is applied to the different providers would really help us financially be able to afford that. Now, as far as getting them logistically, the whole Buy America thing, I think that's a challenge that MoDOT's probably going to face for a little bit, but I think they're working through a lot of those.
Travis, the flexibility of the state assistance program, being able to use it for operating or capital, is a godsend. And I can't thank MPTA enough for your advocacy to get that increased and to keep it stable for us, because right now we're using it all for operating, but going forward, it's in our back pocket that we can use it for capital if needed, because to Tracy's point, the cost of vehicles have increased so much that even though we now have vehicles available to us on the MoDOT procurement, we're limited by the amount of match we have.
Anyone else? Oh, Kim, go ahead.
I was just, Is anyone else feeling the pinch with regards to that local match, the match for your capital vehicles?
I know we
Tiffany's
are.
got her hand raised.
Yeah, we are here at CTA. We we have actually this year went to the county commission and asked for Cape County to consider covering the cost. We went to other people to ask them to covering the local match for specific vehicles that we provide. You know, specifically trying to explain to them that, you know, our match was this 5 years ago, our match is this now, you know, what is that going to specifically to do? And I'm proud to say most of those organizations were are willing to listen. They weren't aware that the costs have gone up so much. So I feel like that's been huge for us is we had some of them that have already committed to giving us extra just for a match for vehicles we're getting ready to order.
So, and probably a little easier for you, Jenny, because you're in one location. Dorothy, part of your issue for the local match is you're in 87 counties. So do you go to every county? Is that where your contracts are coming in?
Yes and no. For one thing, we had we didn't have new vehicles coming in for so long that our reserves were quite healthy from
Okay.
fundraising and contributions. But looking forward, how to replace those reserves as we draw them down. And part of our strategy is looking at that state assistance. And especially if the federal goes to 80-20 for operating, that will free up some local cash. And we could potentially use the state assistance to help with capital.
You know, with me being new and a lot of our staff not necessarily being fully vetted on what the transportation billing requirements are and different things through the 5311 grant or Seymour or even our aging best contracts, you know, I would love to have someone mentor me and help me understand the actual billing process, the seeking of the grant for community match or something. Our county commission only gives us $2,500 and that's for some limited rides, but no one is funding, you know, a new bus or fixed routes, things of that nature yet. And I would love to have some coaching on how to even go ask that might have worked in other counties because it's needed for us to be able to keep doing what we're doing without the full payments on Seymour and the MODOT requisitions. We're struggling. Our bottom line is being affected, and you know we're looking at closing part of our transit if we can't find a new way to bill or to get our match. That's where we're at.
So your local agency is providing you a total of 2,500, Stephanie, for matching funding?
The
Okay.
county commissioners only 2,500.
Okay.
And that pays for rides for people that are like in our treatment center that don't have a way to pay, but that goes really fast. And
Sure.
I've asked for half a bus, you know, or half of a used vehicle. I'm like, give me anything, and I've gotten zero.
Now, did you mention yesterday you received 2 donated buses that are from
Yes.
2011, but they have brand new equipment on them?
Yes, so the one vehicle with 539,000 miles is actually a better vehicle than the one with 389,000 miles. So we are stripping that vehicle to replace broken parts on our current fleet vehicles. For instance, it had brand new tires, so we needed new tires on a bus, and over the weekend our mechanic swapped out the tires, which saved me about $600. The lift is only 5 years old and it's been used maybe 25 times. So that's going to be placed in one of our buses that has a tricky lift. Looking at switches, I mean, the seats, it's like, how can we strip this vehicle to serve the ones we do have? The other one we may end up putting into the rotation, but we don't want to unless we are desperate to do so. And so we're just kind of looking at it with what are we going to do with it? I don't know.
Okay. Chuck can relate, but his buses are going to 1,000,000 miles, right, Chuck? Yeah. Okay.
We actually
Go ahead.
eliminated asking any of our funding sources directly for vehicle match a few years ago, just because the accounting actually was complicated. When you ask for specific funding, you have to allocate that as restricted funding versus unrestricted, and we found it was easier for us to just put escrowed, funds aside and designate that internally for capital match, and then use their grant funding to just cover operations in general and be the general match, so that we didn't have to do any extra accounting work behind the scenes. And that worked well for us, but that's, again, we're kind of like Dorothy, and we're spread out, and so we don't get consistent funding across every county. We have some counties we get like senior tax funds from, but most don't. And we just have kind of random things throughout our area, but we have a large percentage of our area that we don't really have many contracts in, and just do a big percentage of Medicaid.
Another thing I wanted to touch on is, there was some mention of, creating new routes for shopping and different things to, I think, kind of meet riders where they are and the demands of riders. How are you all communicating with your riders? I know there's some discussion about advertising to, maybe to boost ridership, but is there surveying going on to kind of find out, what your riders want from your services now, and maybe how that's changed in the last few years and going forward? How are you touching base with them?
I could speak to that real quick. We have the Callaway County Special Services is doing a needs assessment for our populations. And so we've asked all of our riders to fill out their survey. And from that, hopefully come up with a plan as to how we can better serve. But we don't have our own survey yet.
Okay.
So Travis, for us, one of the things that I was really pleased about the same time that we were in our study and we were going out for public comment, we received received over 400 public comments about transit services in Springfield. At the same time, the utility was out for public feedback on another regulatory product, and we by far had so many more replies to transit. So public surveying was really good for us. We did public outreach, couple of open house town hall meeting kind of things at the transit center, and really got great feedback from that. After those, we had an online survey that had us get an additional 50 comments when we had published our route changes. And then since then, we've actually taken out, of course, we're posting things in our buses with QR codes to point to our website, and we've got advertising that we've put in our own shelters through Halk advertising, and just working that system that way. And now we're looking towards our TripSpark, the ITS technology, to start taking up some of that slack for us, where we see some growth opportunities inside the app itself. So we're going to continue to use the tools that we have. The really great thing, side note, you asked about developing new routes. The great thing was for us, when we went to public comment, people weren't really saying we needed to get places we aren't already. The comment that Olson made to our Board of Public Utilities is, it's not that people don't like the service you have. They love the service you have. They just want more of it. And so that was a really great thing for us.
Thanks, Matt. Anybody else in terms of how you've been communicating, with your riders or potential riders?
Travis, just our usual through our website. We are switching from a quarterly newsletter that's been mailed to all of our riders and going to an electronic monthly newsletter. So we'll have more frequent engagement, and we're building up that email listing so it will reach more people. And I'm hoping we'll be able to utilize that tool to get better feedback. Historically, back in the olden days, when I first started, Oates had a core of volunteers throughout the state of Missouri, and that's kind of died away. We just don't have the volunteer pool that we used to, and so we've lost that local touch that we used to have. And, we're going to have to rely on technology to get that back.
Gotcha. The other thing that I think came up in the introductory remarks several times is just talking about some transitions with technology, dispatching software, fare. How have you all dealt with researching options? I know we had, a couple sessions on that in the conference from NCAT, folks at CTAA kind of talking about some of those options there. And I wasn't able to sit in on a session. So one, was that helpful? And was that some good information? Would more of that in the future, be helpful to you all? And two, just, how are you all navigating, determining, what the best solution is for you and finding out how it's working maybe for other people?
Well, technology is a challenge, that's for sure. And I want to apologize to everyone who received emails from me last week asking to open a document. It's like, I don't know where that came from. Sometimes technology has a mind of its own. I do know that we're getting some feedback from riders who want to be able to utilize technology to access OATS. So we do have an app now that allows them to see where their bus is and what their balance account is, and at some point allow them to schedule through the app. But it is a challenge, and it's a challenge to get staff on board with that, riders and drivers, getting everyone comfortable with that technology.
So Dorothy, just an aside, you were not the only one that spam email came from. So it came from Frank as well. And somehow when you ask if it's legitimate, they have figured out how to send you a spam response that says, yes, this is a legit email. So don't worry.
Oh, gosh.
I tried to open it several times because I thought it was the response to the survey that we did recently. I was like, oh yes, the results are here.
So about the technology for us is stay in touch, stay in conversation with this group. Early on, we thought Oates was just in love with EcoLane, and then recently I've not heard quite the affinity for the program. We have taken advantage of meeting every group that comes to the MPTA conference and the Quad Straight conference, and we stay in touch with those vendors, especially when we know we want to make a change. And in the process, we've had several demonstrations over the years. And what we found as we were watching the landscape change with Route Match being bought by Uber and then being sold to TripSpark, we ultimately, our whole staff wanted to go back to Trapeze, which is where we came from before we went to Route Match. And so we were able to make a business justified case, shift some money around from the CARES Act ARPA dollars, get them off of the plate and use local utility dollars, and then sole source, sole brand, and migration from one to the other. So that worked well for us. And I just keep all your options open, get creative in how you can utilize those, how you can utilize your monies to get what you want.
I appreciated all of the information that, and the vendors and everybody together. We haven't had time to really look at it, but we're in the position that Dorothy was in a few years ago. We're still doing paper trip sheets. So it's a challenge for us, and I'd like to see us acquire some software, but I know it's going to require a lot of research because, man, it's a big change. It's a big shift. And I know there's some limitations with some, and some are better for rural than others, but I think keeping in communication with you all and learning which ones are working for your different areas is going to be really helpful. I know we actually had looked at EcoLane a couple times, and the cost was really astronomical for what we could afford. And I don't know if Dorothy, if you were able to get something a little more reasonable, but I mean, the cost to us was kind of crazy, actually.
We migrated from trapeze and the cost was quite a bit less than what we were paying with trapeze, so it made good business sense. And Matt, I don't know who at Oates you've been talking to. I know there's a love-hate relationship with EcoLane, but I've told everyone while I'm executive director, learn to love it because we're not changing again. That was painful.
It was a while ago, but I'm sure that message is received. And I apologize. I shouldn't be telling
No,
your
it's
story
fine.
for you.
It has its issues. I mean, it's not been all butterflies and hearts with them. It's been a challenge, but overall it's working well for us.
At one point, EcoLane had said to us, shortly after you all had hopped on board with them, that there might be some ability to piggyback. And maybe there are some states that do statewide contracts. I don't know that from city utility standpoint, I can't speak for Kansas City or St. Louis, but from city utility standpoint, we're probably not interested in that based on how we've seen those contracts work. But there may be some opportunity to partner in some of those results, and you could work with some of the salespeople or ourselves to look at those options.
I mean, we're only in day 2 of TripSpark, but you know, Matt is huge and we're small, and they were able to customize what we do. Starting next Monday, also our riders will be able to schedule online some of their own rides, just utilizing all the things that TripSpark has to offer us, and they've customized a lot of things for us as far as billing. And yes, we had route match, but our drivers also were still using paper manifests, so that's an adjustment. But I just think that being able to have better streamlined reporting, that the way we were doing NTD reporting here is a little chaotic, I think. And TripSpark has been very good to guide through that. So when that time comes, hopefully my reports will be super clean and we will have less struggles with that. But like I said, I think they've just been really beneficial to us thus far. Especially with me coming in with no transit background, coming from an education standpoint, we just have kind of meshed those two things, and local match is a struggle for us. And then hiring is a struggle, and we've just kind of changed how we're doing business overall, just a complete culture shift. So we're hoping that that benefits our community.
Great. Day 2, it's only going to get easier from here, right? Well, I could ask, like 10 more questions, but I know it's 1 o'clock and I want to respect everybody's time over the lunch hour. I am going to drop a registration link in the chat to our State of Transit in Missouri webinar that we have coming up on November 19th. You can also visit the mopublictransit.org website for more information on that, but definitely join us for that. Appreciate everybody participating today. We did record the meeting, except for like the first 20 seconds of Matt talking, because I thought it was going and it wasn't, so that's my fault. But we'll be posting a recap later today too. Go ahead, Kim.
Sure. I just had one question before we go. Travis and I are really curious, and Karen in our office, if this is of value to you or not. You don't have to, you won't hurt our feelings if you say this was a total waste of my hour, but you can also shoot us an email if you found this valuable, or if not, because we can do these on a quarterly basis. If this is helpful for you to share ideas, if it's not, we could be on one specific topic at a time, but we just want to make sure we're connecting you as much as possible, because I know we have so many new leaders in Missouri. So when you get a moment, either throw it in the chat. Again, you will not offend us, or let us know via email what worked and what didn't for you today. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day, and we will be in touch soon. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great
Bye.
day.
Thank you.